Welcome back to the class on international business communication. We have talked about different things. Today we'll talk about a topic that has gained a lot of importance in the recent times, and that is communication during crises. Now, I do not have a revision slide for this because we have a lot of stuff that we need to cover in 1 hour, and we have very little time. So we'll straight away jump into the topic of crisis communication. What is a crisis? A crisis is a major catastrophe that may occur either naturally or as a result of human error. It can include tangible devastation, such as the destruction of lives or assets, or intangible devastation, such as the loss of an organization's credibility. In the latter case, the loss of credibility may be the result of management's response to tangible devastation or the result of human error. And again, as you can see from this definition, now this is the definition that I found to be the most comprehensive definition on crisis. It encompasses everything. It encompasses the actual devastation plus the impression management. So the actual devastation may not be as much as is caused by the post-crisis communication, and that is what this definition also covers. It is the psychological, the physical devastation as a result of human error or natural causes. And this is in a book called Business Scenarios, a case-based approach by Schultz, and I will give you the reference to it. Now, as with the rest of this course, this particular class is also derives its learnings from various papers, various research documents, etc. So I don't claim to be an expert on any of this. There are many people who are doing a lot of work on many of these areas of communication, and that is why I've just taken the best I could find and compiled all of that into today's lecture. Some emergencies that organizations may face. One is natural disasters. Natural disasters, we've had several of them in the recent years. We've had tsunamis, we've had all kinds of disasters in the recent years. We've had a volcanic eruption, we've had cyclones. All of these things can affect the working of an organization. We could have technical disasters, we could have systems falling apart, we could have crises of confrontation where the employees go against the organization. We could have crises, acts of malevolence, where people try and create problems or sabotage the working of an organization. We could have acts of deception against the organization or from within an organization, and we could have management misconduct, which could include frauds and financial irregularities, etc. So there are lots of examples that one can find about each of these. Now, these are just categories, and you'll find a lot of different kinds of crises. Some of them are actually as a result of the working of the organization that is facing the crisis, or that is in the crisis, and some of these are uncontrollable. They just happen. Technical disasters could happen because of something the organization has not done. They've taken every possible precaution, but there happens to be a virus attack, there happens to be a solar surge, there happens to be some problem, there happens to be a major power shutdown because of natural causes that results in a technical disaster. Program malfunctions, that could be one. Natural causes definitely are not in our control. Crisis of confrontation, also we can only control a little bit of the situation. The rest of it could be beyond our control. So all of these things, we may or may not be prepared for all of these things. And that's why these are emergencies. These come up. We could have contingency plans. We discussed in the first class, we've been repeating this. We could have contingency plans. We could make plans for things that we anticipate, but many times things don't happen as we plan for them. They happen in a totally different context, and usually we are not prepared, and that is the time when we term the situation as a crisis. Some potential hotbeds for crises. These are situations that if not controlled, that if not taken care of in the early stages, can result into massive full-blown crises. The first one here is petty crimes by employees. Small things, but they add up. People may talk, they just get out of hand, and that can create a problem. Neglected industrial unrest is another one. Some small issue because of which the employees are unhappy or uncomfortable can then eventually just blow up into something huge. Mismanagement, especially misappropriation of funds or power. If you just read this whole list, consumer dissatisfaction, small things that the consumers are not comfortable with, things that are just, maybe in the case of medicines or consumables specifically, or durables. Things sort of start falling apart. You get one complaint, you don't respond to it, you get 10, you don't respond, and then suddenly there's a flurry of complaints and you have to pull out everything from the market. So whistleblowing is another one. Somebody blows the whistle on someone, usually the whistleblower is victimized. That can really blow up into something that is totally uncontrollable. Whistleblowing should never be treated casually. Whistleblowers come up where there is a real problem, and if you see a whistleblower, you should handle the situation with care, go into the depth of the situation, and instead of victimizing the whistleblower, use what the information the whistleblower has to fill up the weak links, or to strengthen the weak links in your organization, to fill up the gaps in your organization. Because the whistleblower is blowing the whistle because they are feeling uncomfortable about something, and if they are feeling uncomfortable, there could be a whole bunch of other people who are feeling uncomfortable about the same thing but are not speaking up about it. And if this discomfort continues, it piles on, and one day it just explodes, boom, everything just falls flat, and that can be a problem. Legal actions, again, small suits filed against the organization that can, if not handled carefully, can result in big full-blown crises. Or discrimination. Acts of discrimination, make sure in this day and age of equality, egalitarianism, legal rights, awareness of people about their rights and responsibilities, it is very important to focus, to ensure that no one is discriminated against on the basis of disability, on the basis of illness, on the basis of gender, on the basis of race, on the basis of color, on the basis of educational qualifications. Skills, you can't call it discrimination, you just call it the best fit. People are not fitting into a job, you have to shift them in the interest of the efficiency of the work that is required. But other than that, moving people from one point to another, or taking away the benefits that somebody has, just because you don't like the color of their skin, just because you don't like the way they look, just because you think that they may not be efficient, unless you've had a some chance to judge their efficiency in that situation. Just taking away opportunities from people, depriving people of opportunities because they are sick, because they are of a different gender, because they are of a different race, can qualify as discrimination and can get you into major trouble. So again, these things should be handled very carefully. Okay, a model of crisis perception. Now this is a difficult thing, but I thought I would share this with you. Permission is awaited. The source is mentioned over here. I didn't have space, so I just put it on the side. I have staggered these points here, so you know that these are different points, not the same paragraph here. Anyway, where do you start with a problem, and how does this problem become a crisis? This diagram really outlines how sensing a problem eventually translates into the definition of a problem as a crisis. Okay, and this is by a paper by Billings, Milburn and Scalman, that's called A Model of Crisis Perception, a Theoretical and Empirical Analysis. I happen to have the paper here with me. I'm going to give you the reference to it. This is the paper. It's called A Model of Crisis Perception. I've just recreated this diagram that is on this page. This is from the Administrative Science Quarterly, volume 25, issue 2, page number 301. And so I've just recreated this diagram and I'll just explain it to you. Okay, How do you define a problem as a crisis? You sense a problem, there are indicators of existing states. Now, before we go into this, remember we had talked about antecedent conditions in conflict management. That model can be extrapolated to pretty much anything in human behavior. You have antecedent conditions, you have something that is perceived, you have something that is felt, it manifests itself, there is an aftermath that feeds back into this whole situation. The same thing happens here. There are some antecedent conditions, and again, you can expand that model to any place you want, but that is pretty much what most of these things can fit into. Again, I keep going back and forth because in the social sciences, things are linked. You don't have things that are linear. Everything is linked to something that you may have talked about in the past. Everything is linked to something that you may talk about in the future. So that is what this is. Okay, model of crisis perception, we have indicators of the existing state. There is a desired state, which is historical planning or other people's standards, and as always, I forgot to close the bracket. Sorry about that. Size of discrepancy, which is the problem sensed. This indicators of existing states lead to the size of discrepancy, which is the problem sensed if discrepancy exceeds some threshold. It shouldn't be same, it should be some threshold. Desired state is there. So you have where you are, where am I, and where I should be, and all of these contribute to a state of discrepancy. Yes, this is where I am, but this is where I should be, and there's something going on in your head. Why is there a discrepancy? There is a threshold that has been exceeded. My tolerance level is crossed, and this is what this is. That leads to perceived value of possible loss. I have lost X. This is what I should be getting. This is what I am getting now. I have lost this much. There is a quantification of the loss. There is a perceived value. It may or may not be correct, but in my mind, I have lost so much. Okay. Perceived importance of problem area here in the diagram also contributes to the perceived value of possible loss. So the difference between the desired state and the current state and the perceived importance of the desired state leads to our judgment of or our perception of a possible loss. This is how much I would have had if I had the opportunity that has been promised to me. Okay, that then confidence in accuracy of desired state and indicators of existing state. So, I feel I should be getting this much, but how confident am I? If I'm really confident, then that leads to my belief that yes, there has actually been a loss. It's not something that I'm thinking about in the air. There has actually been a loss. Alternative explanations for apparent discrepancy. Again, I don't have what I should have had because of these reasons. Response uncertainty about efficacy of response, including inaction, routine solution, or original solution. Again, I don't know how I would have reacted or the response that I would have got if I had mentioned this to somebody. All this sort of leads to our belief that there has been some loss. That leads to perceived probability of loss. If I had acted a certain way, I would have got it. But then the uncertainty I have also leads to my sensing the loss. If I had acted, maybe I would have got it, maybe I would not have got it. Okay, or routine solution, if I had applied a routine solution or if I had come up with a different solution, I'm not sure of how that would have felt or how that would have fed into my getting what I think I deserve. All of these things lead to the perceived probability of loss. There's a perceived value, there's a perceived probability of loss. Yes, I have lost something. I'm confident I've lost something. Okay, response uncertainty, this we've covered. Perceived negative consequences if the problem is disregarded. I choose not to respond. If you remember in the persuasion section or in the conflict management thing, we said that if, in the model of conflict, the process of conflict, we said that if you don't do anything, it just piles on. There are perceived negative consequences if the problem is disregarded. If I choose not to act on what I think I've lost, then what will happen? Perceived time to search for a satisfactory solution. Again, I don't know what will happen. If I don't act on it, this is what I will lose more in addition to what I've already lost. This is the amount of time I have to take care of what I think I've lost. That adds up to the perceived time pressure. This is the pressure I'm feeling. This is what I'm feeling right now. This is what I think I've lost. All of this, perceived value of possible loss, perceived probability of loss, and perceived time pressure, all of this combines to form the extent of the perceived crisis. This is the crisis I perceive. Now depends on how big I am as a unit or as a group of people or as an organization. The crisis is first perceived from the point of, if you see, it's all feeling. I sense a problem, I perceive the value of loss, I perceive the probability of loss, I perceive the time pressure, and I decide that it is a crisis based on all of these factors. This is how a mountain becomes a molehill. Again, there is a paper, I'm sorry, if I start looking for it, I'll waste some time, but there's a paper that talks about how molehills become mountains. I'm not sure if I have it here somewhere, but anyway, no, I'm not able to find it, probably not. Okay, anyway, I will give you the reference to it. That's again by the same author. I think it's by Billings and Milburn. So, but I will give you the actual reference to that paper, where this whole process of a molehill becoming a big mountain just because we feel that it's a big mountain is explained. And okay, crisis management models. How do we manage crises? We have a pre-event phase. There's a risk assessment that is done and contingency plans are developed. There's a prodromal phase. One is geared for action, and then there is the emergency phase. When the actual crisis strikes, efforts are taken to protect lives and property in that order, and then we move on to impression management. Okay. Contingency planning for a crisis. How do you plan for a crisis? You identify general and specific vulnerabilities. Okay, so you find out where one can lack, and again this is the pre-planning stage. How do you plan in case a crisis strikes? What do I lack? Where am I weak? Identification of key stakeholders, who will be affected. Identification of key members, who will act when the organization is affected. Identification of communication channels, how will we, please focus here, thank you, how will we send the message, where will we send the message through, what will we send the message through. Post-crisis communication, crisis recovery, and reputation management. How will we recover from the crisis, and how will we manage our reputation after the crisis has struck? So this is how you plan for a crisis when you sense that something is missing. Going back to the previous model, here you find that this size of discrepancy is there's something wrong, something is happening that shouldn't happen, and then once you sense this, then you plan for the crisis. Okay, what happens during a crisis? In a crisis, lots of things happen, but specifically with respect to communication, the transmission of data and information is more rapid and spasmodic. It goes fast and it goes in bunches. It goes boom and then stops, and boom and stops. That's like a spasm. Processing of information may be erratic and on an irregular basis, and again because everybody is feeling that pressure, information may not be processed as it is supposed to be processed. Culture destroys formal structures, and again the culture of the organization, if it is a very vertical organization, that sort of just the formal structures, the formal channels of communication are destroyed because of the organizational culture. Communication becomes more fluid. The communication sort of it leaks from various places. It doesn't move in the direction it's supposed to move. Silos spring up. Silos are these closed networks of people, these cliques. People just get together with people they feel most comfortable with, and those networks or those cliques spring up, especially because of the ease of communication between the cliques. Despite contingency planning and best efforts claimed on the part of senior administration, high ambiguity occurs in internal communication. Line managers and junior employees feel left out and not heard and eventually not cared for, because the information is spasmodic, it is rapid, it's just in spurts. No one knows what is happening, where it's happening, so the smooth functioning is disrupted, and that results in this kind of a situation where people at the front line, people who can actually do something, don't really know what is going on. And these are some of the things that can happen to the communication in an organization when a crisis strikes. Cultural change, structural distortion and degradation of communications at the time of a crisis. Again, this is from a paper by Smallman and Weir, Wire, I'm sorry for the pronunciation, Communication and Cultural Distortion During Crisis, published in Disaster Prevention and Management. I have that paper somewhere here, but I'm not going to waste time pulling it out. What happens is there are 4 kinds of people here. We have the fatalists, we have hierarchists, we have egalitarians, and we have individualists. Fatalists are low on group formality, and the communication doesn't really reach them as smoothly as it should. Hierarchists, the communication flow is viscous, but they are very high on group formality, so they are integral parts of the group. Egalitarians are where the communication is fluid and there is high group formality, everybody is high and all these high pedestals are together. The individualists are low on group formality, they say we are all independent and the communication is very fluid, communication reaches them, but they are not really part of the cliques in the organization, they are not very high on expressing hierarchy, and so the communication is fluid. Now these are the 4 quadrants within an organization. What happens is when crisis strikes, it destroys these formal structures, the communication flow which is going on smoothly all becomes fluid, the formality becomes low, the structural distortion leads to everybody becoming an individualist, where people are just fending for themselves, where people are just fighting for themselves, they're trying to save themselves, they're trying to save their reputations, and the structure of the organization is destroyed. The hierarchists also become individualists because they are hunting for information, they are looking for information, crisis has stricken, everybody is trying to save themselves, so eventually group formality vanishes, the communication either it comes in spurts, but then all of it comes together, there is no time to filter out the communication and send it to different hierarchical channels, and that really happens in a crisis. The communication degrades, it becomes lesser, but then whatever is available to everybody. Okay, why do we need to manage communication during a crisis? What happens is the reduction of the level of negative emotions that is experienced by stakeholders leads, when we manage communication in a crisis situation, there is a reduction in the level of negative emotions experienced by stakeholders. We handle communication, we give information to people who really require it, and then people's negative emotions are minimized, people feel less uncomfortable, they start feeling more and more comfortable in the situation, they know that somebody is looking after their interests. This leads to a reduction of the threat to the reputation posed by the crisis. So there is a threat to, of course, property, lives, depending on what the crisis is. Big threat is to the reputation, which is a key factor in the purchase intention of any of the consumers of any business, and that is really where all this is going. There's a reduction of the threat to reputation posed by the crisis that leads to a reduction of the likelihood of negative word of mouth, and that in turn leads to a reduction of the likelihood of the impact of the crisis on purchase intention. You reduce the negativity in the emotions of the key stakeholders that eventually percolates to the word of mouth that they spread. They say, yes, we've been hit by something, something has gone wrong, somebody has goofed up, weather's been bad, buildings fallen down, there's been an earthquake, whatever, but we have been kept in the loop. Once they feel that, then their intention to trust you will still be heightened, and that is really what this does. Okay, crisis communication strategy provides for the accurate, timely, coordinated, appropriate and understandable release of business related information to the general public in times of potential and actual crises and emergencies that impact or have the potential to impact the business. I found this to be very, very comprehensive. This is from a book by Professor Payal Mehra. I will show it to you in the last class. I found this to be very good. Indian students, again, I don't know Professor Mehra personally, but I've just got this book from my publisher contacts, and it's a very good book. If you want a concise book on business communication, I would recommend this. I'll show you this book. So this definition is from that book. Overview of a crisis communication process. You have a crisis, you have a crisis response team where people are responding to the crisis. They have been taught what to do. They choose the appropriate medium. They have new media, websites, social networking, etc. They have traditional media, newspapers, press conferences, etc. They inform the relevant people through this media, and then they come up with a communication response plan which really helps them deal with the crisis. Okay, very, very simplistic view of how crisis communication happens. Functions of effective communication in a crisis. What happens is, if we deal with communication effectively in a crisis, the employees become more and more confident. It helps deal with rumors and gossip. It helps share the company's plan to deal with the crisis. It helps the employees cooperate with each other, and it helps minimize the impact of bad news. So we really need to manage crises. All of these things are interrelated here. Some typical confusions that come up during crises. The first one is the attitude of higher ups towards crisis communication versus crisis management, and again these are noted as schisms or schisms in the paper by Pang, Kropp and Cameron that was published in 2006, and they say that these are some divisions in the thought process. There people feel differently about these things. One group of people in the organization will feel that communication has to be managed. So communication is more important than managing the crisis. It's more important to let everybody know what is happening than to deal with, than to have few people deal with situations and others running around like headless chickens. Now again, different people feel differently. The other people feel, there's another group of people that feels that if you inform the key stakeholders what is going on, it's better. One group of people feels that if you manage it, you don't spread it as much, let the people who are responsible for things do what they're supposed to do. That will help reduce the negative feelings that people have about the crisis situation. Expectations regarding the chain of command and the division that would coordinate the crisis communication campaign. Again, who is responsible for what becomes a bone of contention. What should who be doing? So, should they shift the responsibility? Should the top management be looking after it? Should only one division be dealing with it? You just wash your hands off and say, I can't do any more than this. This is all I can handle. This is beyond my control. This is beyond the purview of my assignment. I'm not going to deal with it for fear of it bringing a bad name. So that is always a cause of confusion. Proactive, open and detailed communication regarding the crisis versus restricted and limited communication. What really happens is, should you be proactive, should you be open, should you be detailed, or should you restrict and limit your communication to only the team members who are actively involved in managing the crisis? Again, there are two views, confusions. The resolution depends on what your organization at that point of time feels best for itself. I'm just telling you that these are the things that will come up, so don't be surprised. Role of line managers in carrying out crisis management procedures. Should line managers be informed? Should they be involved? What if one of the line managers or one of the frontline workers is really responsible for the crisis? Then what do you do? So all of these things come up as confusions, and they need to be dealt with very, very sensitively. And that's where communication and effectiveness of communication, the unambiguous, clear communication comes in. That is where you need to know why you're saying, what you're saying, how you're saying it, when do you say it, and to who you're saying what. and how will it impact the whole situation. And that's where, you know, whatever we have talked about till now sort of starts playing in. Okay. Reputation management strategies. Situational crisis communication theory, called as SCCT. It is the reputation management efforts should only occur after addressing public safety, both physical and psychological. The second reputation management, one of the reputation management strategies is corporate apologia, which is a genre encompassing reputation management strategies that include apology, that explain how organizations explain their positions during crisis, either through apology or through other strategies that we will just talk about. Corporate apologia could be of various types. You could have dissociation, which means removing yourself from the situation, dissociating from the situation, and you could have 3 different types of dissociations according to Hear It, etc. Mentioned in Coombs and Associates 2010. Opinion or knowledge dissociation, you say the charges against the organization have no merit and do not match the facts of the situation. So whatever the media is saying is all rubbish. It doesn't make sense. Individual or group dissociation, you say that a few bad apples are bringing a bad name to the whole organization. Yes, a few employees in the organization did something wrong, we admit it, but it doesn't mean that the whole organization is bad. Act or a sense dissociation is when you say that one bad act cannot, bring a bad name to the whole organization and to its reputation forever. Yes, we faltered, we made a mistake, but that doesn't mean that we'll always make a mistake. That doesn't mean that we are like this. This one bad act is not representative of our entire value system. So we are dissociating, we are removing ourselves, we are pulling ourselves back from the situation. Image repair theory talks about, please focus on the screen, thank you. Image repair theory talks about or explains that organizations have reputations or images that are valuable to the corporation and warrant protection when threatened, valuable to the corporation or the organization, and they need to be protected when they are threatened. So our image is very important, and I just told you why image is important. The image really leads to word of mouth, which really feeds back into the negative emotions people experience. All the stakeholders have, except for the actual people, actual team members involved in dealing with the crisis, all that everybody else has is the impression, is what the media tells them, and that needs to be managed aggressively. Some strategies used for image repair. How do nations, now we are talking about international image repair. Again, I have jumped, these things are interrelated. We are talking about international business communication. This specific paper dealt with the international image repair strategies, and I'll give you the reference to it. What do different nations do in order to repair their image internationally? One is denial and shifting the blame. I don't know who did it, it's not my fault. First reaction, anyone's first reaction when they are caught doing something wrong. Evasion of responsibility by shifting the blame to provocation. I was provoked. I am not responsible for it because under normal circumstances I would not have done it, but it kept adding on, and on, and finally one day I blew up. It's not my fault because I was provoked. I would not have normally done this. Defeasibility, lack of feasibility due to inadequate information and control. This would not have happened. If I had the information that was required for me to function effectively in this situation. If I had control over the situation, it would not have happened. Because I had no control over the situation, this happened. So I was provoked. 2, I had no control or little information that resulted in my doing this. So you're essentially shifting the responsibility, evading responsibility. I'm not responsible. Either it's lack of information or lack of control, or it is provocation that is responsible. Accident, this happened by accident. I could not have prevented it. It was sudden. Or my intentions were good. I had very good intentions. I did not intend to hurt your feelings, I did not intend to do something wrong, but it happened and I'm sorry for it. So you sort of evade the responsibility. Because my intention was good, I cannot be held fully responsible for this act. Okay. Reducing offensiveness. How do you reduce the negative effects of in a crisis situation? One is bolstering one's positive traits. You say, you know, yes, something's gone wrong, but look at all these positive things I have. We are a good organization. We have a reputation for being a very employee friendly organization. We've done so much of social work. We treat our employees well. We are green. We look after the environment. We have, you know, so all of this sort of should take away the negative effect of the crisis situation. Minimization of the severity of the situation. You just say that it's not as severe as it's made. You know, it is the severity is, you don't acknowledge the severity of the situation. You don't say it, but you don't acknowledge the severity of the situation. You don't take active steps to counter the perceived severity of the situation. Differentiation is when you actively suggest that the event was less severe than it's being made out to be, or than it is being made out by the media, by the press, by the employees. You are feeling it too much. It was not as serious as you think you're feeling about it. Transcendence is placing the situation at a higher level with more important concerns. Okay, transcendence is you place the situation at a higher level and you say that I have more important, you know, the situation is not as important. There are other things that are more important than the situation. You attack the accuser. You say it was somebody else's fault. This person who's accusing me of doing something wrong is really the person who has so many bad things in his past. Compensation to the victims. You say, yes, we made a mistake, but we are going to compensate the victims and we will take care of you. We will take care of all the negative things that have happened to you. So please don't blame us. So you reduce the negative effects. Corrective action. We take corrective action to repair our image. We say, okay, yes, we made a mistake. We are sorry. This is how we will correct it. Mortification. Oh my God, the heavens have come crashing down. We are at a loss. Please save us. Admit your mistake and then just fall flat and you say we are mortified, we didn't expect this, we are sorry, you apologize, you take responsibility for it and sort of go from there. Okay. Culture and image repair. How do you repair the image based on your culture? You have contextuality of cultures, which determines the strategies for impression management dependent on the culture. So what are your goals? What do you really want to do determines how you manage impressions. Is your goal to repair the image of the organization? Is your goal to make people comfortable? Is your goal to achieve your to earn tons of money no matter what? What is your goal? And that will determine how, you know, your cultural background, your cultural underpinnings will determine how you repair the image that has been badgered because of this crisis. Uncertainty avoidance. Again, we have talked about these things in the class on intercultural communication. I will revise them in the last lecture also. There is uncertainty avoidance. We try and avoid uncertainty. And again, that depends on which culture we are coming from. Face negotiation. Are we trying to manage the public image of the organization, or are we trying to manage the public image of the employees involved, or are we trying to manage the public image of the wrongdoers in the organization? Long-term versus short-term post-crisis relationship. What kind of a relationship do you want with the people who have been affected as a result of the crisis? Do you want a long-term relationship with them? In that case, maybe the corrective action, maybe compensation to victims would be helpful. Maybe you know, the other strategies may not work as well. Even mortification might help. Evasion of responsibility, denial and all may not work. Good intentions may work. People have a reputation, but other things may not work. If you have a short term, if you want to end the relationship with the stakeholders as soon as the crisis is past. You're just trying to get out of the situation. Then you could resort to the face damaging tactics. You could resort to you could say, I'm better, and it's your loss that you are not really in this relationship with me. It's your loss that you're pointing a finger at me, because I'm going to emerge successful, and I don't care what happens to you after this whole situation is over and has blown away. How does media play a role in crisis communication? You need to use media, but with a lot of care. Appoint a credible spokesperson to provide an accurate and balanced view of the situation. The power of media can severely impact the reputation of an organization during crisis. People listen to what is said on TV, on the news. People listen to what is said on television. People listen to what is said in the news. People listen to excuse me. People pay attention to what is being discussed in the media. So you should appoint a credible a credible spokesperson to deal with the media, who can provide an accurate and balanced view of the whole situation, who can give the stakeholders the kind of information they need from you as the or from the organization that has been affected by the crisis. Okay. How do you use media to deal with crisis? The first stage is you manage the issues. Control the development of a company's website. Now we are talking about media specifically. We've talked about what a crisis is, how do you manage crisis. Now we are talking about how you can use media to deal with a crisis. The first stage is you manage the issues. You control the development of the company's website. You put up the correct information. You put up what goes up, what comes down, how people perceive it, number of hits, who's viewing it. Get all those details. Update emailing lists and contact databases. Keep people in the loop. If you have a contact database where you can share information, make sure you have the right information. Implement media monitoring service for online media. Again, you can monitor who views your media, how it is used, how many downloads, what people do with this media. So you have to, you should implement the monitoring service. Register all possible domain names. You have different domain names. Make sure people don't go to a competitor's website with a different domain name. We've all had experiences where we've typed a wrong domain name and it takes us to undesirable sites. So this is one way of handling the media. Find out what different domain names can be and register yourself on all of these different domain names. It can be a little expensive, but it helps you in the long run. And manage those domains so that anything remotely similar to you comes to your company's website instead of going to another company's website. Familiarize corporate communications team with the virtual world and what the virtual world can do, the power of the virtual world. Okay, planning and prevention. Identify prominent online influencers and opinion leaders. Who blogs about you? What do people say about you? Who writes things on Twitter about you? So find out all of these online influencers and opinion leaders. Find out what they are saying, why they are saying what they are saying, and identify them, and that can help you plan and prevent the crisis. Plan for the crisis and prevent it. Utilize new media technologies to establish online monitoring alert system. So you have new media technologies where you can use the internet, you can use blogging, you can use listservs, you can use advertisements on television. So have some technology that can help you monitor the alert systems for crisis. Create a hidden or dark website. Have a backup website where you put the not so desirable information but actual, factual, true information about yourself. Have that ready just in case you're caught on the wrong foot. If you are, you should be the one giving people the correct information. They should not be finding out this bad information about you from a different source. You, as the organization, should be giving them the accurate information. Consider the tone and language of the online world. Find out what the online world requires from you. find out what kind of language they use, how this language affects the tone, how this language affects how they think of you. Adopt a global mindset. In times of crisis, adopt a, find out what people want from you, and learn to accept difference as difference. Again, see things in different perspectives, agree to or look at things from different perspectives, see what people can see as right and what people can see as wrong. May or may not be the same as what you are trying to say, but adopt a global mindset. Develop online crisis manuals and test it. So develop a manual that you can use in terms of an online, in terms of a crisis, that you can share with different parts of your organization, and test the manual, test the efficacy of the manual, test test how your employees and stakeholders respond to what is mentioned in the manual. During the crisis, tailor streamlined crisis response for both online and mainstream media. Have a streamlined crisis response, tailor it for online media, tailor it for mainstream media, tailor it for print media, tailor it for traditional media. So have a crisis response ready, and have these different variations or different applications of this crisis response ready. Respond within as little a time as possible. Now, according to this paper, it says 4 hours. I don't know if that is even feasible, but and that's why I replaced the phrase 4 hours with as little time as possible, preferably within a couple of hours. Respond to the crisis from your side, deal with the media, let them know that you are on top of things, because the sooner your stakeholders know that you are taking care of things, the better it is for you and your organization. Get your CEO or member from dominant coalition to personally address the stakeholders. Find someone senior to address the issue. Find someone senior to personally talk to the stakeholders and give them the information that they need. Upfront coverage of crisis information on homepage with feedback feature. So there should be all the information that is required about the crisis should be up on your home page. There should be a feedback feature on your home page that helps the stakeholders get in touch with you. And please don't have this feature just for the heck of it. Make sure that people are actually getting the responses that they are looking for. So you give them, you expect feedback from them, let them respond to, or do appoint somebody to respond to their concerns. Links to third-party endorsements. Have people who are reputed say good things about you, and provide those links on your website. Tap on the dark side if necessary. If necessary during the crisis, definitely use the dark side. Say yes, this is the real negative truth about our organization, but we are telling you so that you don't get the incorrect information from someone else. So you should be the one sharing the accurate information about yourself through the media with the people, and that's how communication helps during a crisis. Okay, post crisis, you've dealt with the situation. Now, after the crisis is over, continue tracking the issue on mainstream and online media. Continue to post updates on the crisis via company website. Track the issue on mainstream media, track the issue on online media. Ask people what they are feeling about it, ask people what they are saying about it, ask people what they feel about it. Post updates on the crisis via the company website. Evaluate the crisis and review how the company responded to your crisis. Define strategies to rebuild the company's reputation. Find out what the crisis resulted in. Find out how your organization has responded to the crisis. Define strategies. Chart out strategies with the help of your colleagues, with the help of the other stakeholders in the organization, and rebuild the company's reputation by using the same media that ended up damaging your reputation. Do the following during the crisis. Again, this is from the book by Professor Payal Mehra. Communicate with your employees about the crisis and how you plan to go about mitigating it. So let your employees in. It doesn't hurt. Tell them what is going on. Tell them what is required. Tell them how they might be affected. Tell them how they can get out of difficult situations. So give them as much information as possible. Seek their support and also inform them about how they should react when a media person approaches them. Let your employees know what to expect. What should they do if media person approaches them and says, I need inside information from you. So your employees should have all this information, and it should be consistent across different levels of the organization. Enlist the support of the top management. And again, you may be the middle management who is responsible, but make sure that of course the top management will know, but get the help from the top management to deal with the crisis. Get the support of the top management to help you deal with the crisis. Collaborate with the CEO at all times. Keep the CEO in the loop at all times. Excuse me. Regularly update the media on events. In addition to updating your own media or your own websites, keep people posted on what is going on. Of course, don't encourage them to pry into your personal affairs. Don't encourage them to seek out information that might be potentially damaging to your organization. But definitely keep them informed about the significant events in the development of the crisis. What happened? How it happened? How are you taking proactive measures to deal with it? What are you doing to alleviate the situation? Appoint a designated spokesperson. It should be Spokey's person. I'm sorry about this spelling mistake. I'm going to correct it right away. Okay. Appoint a designated spokesperson and a website. Make sure that the social media, again, it might help. It might help to post updates on your company's website. It also might help to have a separate website or a separate page that is devoted exclusively to information about this crisis in the organization. Make sure that social media is being used by the organization to keep people updated. You could have updates on Facebook, you could have updates on Twitter, you could have updates on different things. Meet up with stakeholders, share information with them, let them know. Use social media, use traditional media. Just keep abreast with things. Let people know. Meet up with the stakeholders, share information with them, and resolve their concerns if any. This is what I said. You need to, if you have a feedback page, make sure somebody is responding to it. Make sure somebody is on top of it. Designate one person. Apologize when you're wrong and take corrective action. Don't do the following during a crisis. Don't assume that the crisis will pass and everything will be back to normal. The crisis is there to stay. It comes, it takes its toll, it results in some losses, financial, physical, emotional, all kinds, social. It results in all kinds of losses. So it will come, it will take its toll and it will pass. So don't assume that the crisis will pass and everything will be back to normal. You will be back, but then with definite deficiencies. Don't never say no comments to the media, because the minute you say no comments, what do? They start digging for information. They start going to sources that may not be very reliable. So definitely, if you are in a situation, again, this is a personal advice based on what I've seen and read. Many times, if you do not have the authority to share the information, you could maybe, and again, this lecture is going to be up on in the public domain, so I'm sure the media will find some way to counteract it. But what is usually said is, I do not have the authority to share that information. Or if you need to share the information, please go to the spokesperson. I do not have the authority to share the information. I do not have the information you need. My information is based on what I see on public websites, which is what you have put up. So, at that point, they really can't say very much to you. But never say no comments, because then they'll know that something else is there which may or may not be there. Never keep your employees in the dark. Give them as much information as they need in order to deal with the crisis properly. Never think that the immense brand value of the organization will tide you over. Yes, the organization has a brand value, you have a brand value, but never assume that the brand value will carry you through. If you made a mistake, then own up and deal with it. Never use aggressive words with, please focus on the screen. Thank you. Never use aggressive words with negative overtones. Again, don't get aggressive with the media. Don't deal with anyone. Don't say bad things when you're upset. Never start the PR work once the crisis is public. Crisis is out in the open. At that point, please don't start your public relations work. Never use language that is complex and filled with jargon. Why? Because it will result in ambiguous interpretations. These are some of the tips that you can use to communicate effectively during times of a crisis. Now, again, I would like you to think about some things. Discuss what is a crisis, what are the situations that can be perceived as a crisis. How do you decide what is a crisis? When do you decide that something is a crisis? How might crisis be perceived and dealt with, specifically the prioritization of what might need to be dealt with by different cultures, different hierarchies, people in different cultures working together, specifically people working together. How will their perception differ if they're part of the same team? Some people will perceive one event as a crisis, others will not. Different hierarchies. And the last part here is observe a crisis event in your own organization and analyze the communication events in the perception and the management of the said crisis in light of what you have learnt today. And you do this, and then we'll come back with some more and we will wrap up soon. So, thank you.